We're going to be looking at the daily videos from this week. So let's take a look at this one. Let's just listen and we'll share feedback. This week in news tech, daily news podcasts are punching well above their weight with audiences. Here's an interesting stat. Daily news podcasts make up less than 1% of all podcasts produced, but account for more than 10% of the overall downloads in the United States. According to a new report, let's check that out at the Reuters Institute. Daily news podcasts building new habits in the shadow of coronavirus. Again, some of the key findings here, a disproportionate amount of downloads for daily podcasts. There's several formats that they discuss in this article that are interesting. The format pioneered by The Daily, a deep dive of around 25 minutes, the most widely adopted by other publishers around the world. This report has identified 3 other types: an extended chat, a concise news roundup, and a micro bulletin aimed at smart speakers and streaming apps. Publishers see daily news podcasts as a crucial way to attract younger audiences and to engage them more deeply with their brands. News organizations pursuing subscription business models say podcasts, specifically daily news podcasts, help increase loyalty and reduce churn. Here's an interesting graph showing the growth in podcasting over the last 5 to 6 years. The Daily launched in 2017, and the U.S. has continued to see year-over-year growth in daily news podcasts. Another take-home on this story is the podcast platform split. It looks like the leader is Apple, with Spotify as a close second. Thanks for watching This Week in News Tech, the podcast where we discuss the innovations happening in digital journalism. My name is Matt Larson, and we'll see you next time. This Week in News Tech is brought to you by OurHometown.com. Since 1997, Our Hometown has helped local newspapers build websites, native apps, and digital business models. Our latest feature, Audio Articles Playlists, are available on our WordPress platform or as a third-party plugin to any CMS. Learn more at our-hometown.com today. The idea here, though, is this is all about the playlist. So normally a user would just play one episode after another, but we'll just pause it there and just talk about this for a second. I mean, the thing that I didn't mention in the actual article part of, the commentary, tools like Audio Articles make this possible, a daily news podcast possible. And the take home that I had from the article is that they only are a small percentage of the total shows on these apps, but people download these disproportionately more. They download them 10 times as much. And so there's something about, maybe it's an algorithm for the way they're recommended. It just seems to be that a daily format is just more attractive to people to tune in. I don't know. Do you guys have any experience with that? Maybe we could start there. Or do you have any comments on that take-home message?
I mean, I tend to listen to the shorter news podcasts. I only go in for like a deep dive if it's a subject I'm particularly interested in, but I like just having 20 minutes in the morning that briefs me on everything that's been going on.
Right. That would be, one of these subtypes. Yeah. What if that's what it is? It's simply that they're shorter because you have less news every day. If you do it once a week, you have more news, so the episode's going to be longer. Could that be what's making it more popular alone? Who knows? I would agree with you, though.
For me, I'm right there with Tyler. I like to have something short and sweet, but I don't think it's a lack of news. I think it's that there's so much news that you have to cram so much in a limited amount of time. So those little short news clips, and then like Tyler said, if you want to take a deep dive, you have that opportunity. But I'm right there. I'm with the short and sweet. Short and sweet gets my attention every time.
Also, just like the speed the news cycle moves at, like you've got to get everything that happened in that day out, because by the time the next day comes around, if you want to dive deeper, something else has already happened.
Exactly. And I think even for publishers that are, a weekly schedule, they could do this because it's just one story a day, like what we're doing. You don't need to do, NPR does, a 5-minute micro bulletin. It's about 4 or 5 stories every day, like the top stories in the world. That's, I think, a gold standard right there. But for weeklies, you would just need one episode. It could be 1 to 2 minutes long. And you could just spread out the content over the week. So rather than having a 30-minute podcast once a week, you have a 2-minute podcast 7 days a week, something like that.
And I think the key to that being successful is to make sure that those 1 or 2 minute podcasts are meaty. Don't try to make your podcast 2 minutes long just for the sake of making it 2 minutes long. Make sure the content's worth it and people will come back.
As short as possible, really. I mean, when I record these things, I'll be reading through an article. And by the way, this is what I think publishers could do, or someone at the paper could do. They just literally pull up their website and read the article, and if they're the author, they already know what the article is about. So they can just jump to the really important quotes and outline it and just, cut anything that you don't need. I mean, I try to keep, as you see, one of the later ones is purely objective, and some of the earlier ones I'm like kind of commenting as I go. I think you want the commentary reserved for like the longer form and just get them the facts during the week. Let's take a look at the next video here. Is 24/7 digital and Sunday only print the future for local news? This week in News Tech from the Local News Initiative, they are pointing out here that some small weekly news outlets are getting more web savvy, posting online when the news happens, and in effect transforming themselves into daily digital publications. Some metro dailies, on the other hand, have made strides online but are cutting back on their print days. Is it possible that local news outlets of all sizes will meet in the middle? Nancy Lane, the CEO of Local Media Association, says, in a lot of ways, the weekly newspaper may be the survivor. There's a lot of talk about metro dailies and big dailies eventually going to 1 day a week and publishing on Sundays only. We hear that all the time. Like, that's probably where we're headed. And we know there are markets where big metro dailies only publish a few days a week. So they're not far off from becoming a weekly. So the print product probably survives a lot longer than people think it will. We're seeing downsizing in Texas, but they point out the products still have a 7-day-a-week news budget and news cycle. They're just publishing online only. Leonard Woolsey, the president of Southern Newspaper, says, I think print is always going to be part of the model, and it might not be 5 days a week. It might be 2 days a week or 1 day a week. Thanks for watching This Week in News Tech, the podcast where we discuss the innovations happening in digital journalism. My name is Matt Larson, and we'll see. Okay, so we don't have a commercial on this one. We did this on Monday, and this format's rapidly changing. So anyway, let's get to the topic here. This is something that we saw very abruptly. Not to laugh. I mean, it's inevitable. It's just been accelerated by COVID in the last year. Terry, I mean, you saw that firsthand as the production manager, right? Dailies dropping their print frequency.
Right. And even papers that were publishing 2 and 3 times a week just dropped to once a week. Yep.
I mean, what's your reaction to this theory that there's like this gold standard that exists out there for what local news needs to be, can be, and can sustain itself as, which is daily online and weekly in print?
Exactly. And I think one of the ways that can really help a publisher is when they include their daily online, put a little blurb that says, see more in our Sunday edition, push for subscriptions and that sort of thing. It can it can work both ways. The website can feed the print and the print can feed the website, but it's essential to have both.
What happens, I think, naturally, I mean, you used to see it go the other way. Back in the heyday of newspapers, you'd start a weekly newspaper. And, I've been reading a book about the newspaper industry, and they're trying to go from weekly to twice a week. And the ad guy's like, don't do it. I can't support that. So the reverse is happening now. As the advertisers go away, they still are supporting print, but not 7 days a week anymore. But there is still room for a print part of your business. It can still be profitable, is my point, but it can only be once a week because the ads, that's all the ads can support. Also looking at circulation, I guess that's another factor. But even for free print newspapers, I don't know how many free dailies there are out there. Many different factors at play here. I think it's interesting. This kind of inspired me to go with the title, actually, Today in News Tech. rather than this week in news tech, because I think it's got to be fresh. It's got to be every day online. You've got to match what you produce to the platform.
Right.
Print is a platform, you know?
And just to touch on the advertising, again, I'll say, I think we're going to see a comeback in advertising. This is just my crystal ball view, because there are so many streaming options right now that readers and users actually have options to opt out of advertising. So now they're missing out on a lot. And I think that's going to come to light in the very near future, where readers are all of a sudden going to want to see advertising.
Interesting. Yeah, they are making it possible. For a while there, it wasn't really an option, but now, are you talking about like video streaming, like those types of things? They all have paid options now where you can get rid of
Right. You know, and maybe say, for instance, you're in the market for a new house or a new car and you've opted out of all advertising, and now you're looking for a way to find these things. So maybe you go back in and change your settings. And now all of a sudden you want to see cars and housing and things like that. So especially around Christmas time, I think we might start to see an uptick in, of course, there's going to be more advertisers advertising, but I think we're also going to see maybe an uptick in the statistics of what people are actually viewing.
Geez, it's not something I've really thought about much, but yeah, as Google, well, there's, you know, this cookie battle, people are going to be able to opt out. They already are able to opt out of advertisements on social platforms now, right? With Apple's updates. So, I mean, I'm getting those notifications all the time as I re-log into all my Gmail stuff. So that's interesting. Yeah. I didn't expect it to go down towards advertising, but you're right. That definitely plays a role here.
I mean, also on the advertising front, like the more subscriptions people have, the more they're going to get fatigued by having to pay for all those subscriptions. So there might be people switching back to free models at a certain point once we reach a critical mass. Freemium
models. Yeah, that's going to be, that's an article that I'm reading right now for an upcoming episode. We're going to talk about all the paywall models. So Vera, do you have any comments on this as an ex-publisher?
I would definitely, as a publisher, be interested to seeing the new trends and how people are doing certain things and getting that information. So, yeah, I think this is a good tool to have.
Great. Yeah, it's totally a service. You know, I'm looking at it as we're delivering a service. Like I said, match the content to the platform. It's primarily going to be YouTube right now, but we're going to be everywhere eventually. And this will be an audio podcast. This will be we'll have a weekly extended chat, and then we're going to go into office hours after. So we'll be able to repurpose this for our hometown. We experienced with a couple dailies that, you know, you used to be in the same group as. I mean, was there conversations of this when you were there, even before COVID, like rolling back, you know, the dailies and doing less printing there?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we scaled back our free publication for a while to just limit it to digital because the funds wasn't there for, you know, it's a free paper. So we were printing and calculating those costs into the bottom line. So, yeah, it hurt for a while. But from what I understand, the paper is now back on the shelves, which is a good thing, even though we're not there.
People have gone back and forth. Interesting. Like what is the model? I mean, it's a moving target, but you know, ever since the world has changed with Web 2.0 and Facebook and everything coming out, like those are probably the most significant companies in the last 20 years. You know, there hasn't really been much else there. Like how the world has adopted the world they created, you know, how journalism has adopted. I think this is like the final form that they're driving towards. But that's just my opinion. Now let's move on to our third story today in the playlist. And again, like most people would just listen to these back to back, but we're commenting with our publisher support team today. Okay, this is one more by me. Hey everyone, and welcome to This Week in News Tech, the podcast where we discuss the latest innovations in digital journalism. I'm your host, Matt Larson, and today we're going to be discussing using audio to promote greater audience engagement. This is our top story today from the Reynolds Journalism Institute, University of Missouri. they've just got some great tips in here that I really liked on how to use audio to capture content from your audience, record interviews. One nice example that I actually remember hearing on the radio is from On Point, where they actively encourage participation via email. So they are asking users to call in, and they give them some tips on how to get a good recording so that they can eventually use that on the air. Hosting audio-only events was another tip that they had in this article, and I wanted to get our listeners' feedback on this. So in the comments, if you're watching the video, if you're on our website, wherever you are, chime in. As a publisher, can you see yourself using this? You know, obviously we all have the tools available to us today with Zoom, but I'm just curious if there would be any interest in using something that's more integrated into a website or app format. So anyone that is a publisher that would be or is hosting audio-only events, please let me know. I'd be interested in hearing about that. Second story from today from Kevin Slimp, the news guru. He has announced a new webinar series continuing into the fall in partnership with OurHometown.com. Our Hometown provides website services for newspapers, building on a WordPress-based platform that integrates with native apps, generates audio content, does a lot of things for newspapers. And on top of that, the company offers free training through Kevin's webinars. So any customer of Our Hometown can attend this series for free. Just come to OurHometown.com, go to the blog, and register by clicking here. We've got some exciting sessions coming up. Kevin always has new names. He manages to always come up with new topics and completely different trainings, all just, covering InDesign products. So he's covering Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator from all different angles. And I'm really excited to see this one on creating and exporting tags in InDesign files so we can possibly improve our reverse publishing workflows. Okay, and last but not least, we've got an industry interview with Payson Gaddis of the Florida Weekly. Also, Jim Dickerson was on the call, and we heard about some really interesting things they're doing down in Florida. The Florida Weekly is a group of free newspapers throughout Florida, very successful. They're always on the cutting edge, and now they are leading us in the mobile revolution with mobile touchless displays for content distribution. Check out this video interview with Payson Gaddis, the publisher of Florida Weekly.
The Florida Weekly touchless displays are a Wi-Fi enabled vertical display that we install in a lobby, one of our distribution outlets. Okay. And it will be the front page edition of that particular market that we're serving. And then it'll essentially be a slideshow of articles with a teaser headline, if you will. Okay. And then within that, there'll be a QR code that you can actually just go up and scan with your phone.
Thanks for watching this episode of This Week in News Tech. Subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and so that you can see that's a totally different format. Any thoughts on that format versus just the one story, quick, less than 2 minutes?
I think I like the one story, Matt.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way.
I like that too, but I do believe in self-promotion.
Yeah, that's the thing, as I'm debating exactly how to work that in.
Yeah,
I think
I'm not sure we really have to do too much self-promotion, though. I think just the podcast and the objective of the whole thing speaks for itself, really. If you want to put something down in the notes, about this channel or whatever. But yeah,
it's interesting.
I'm kind of partial, I guess, but I really don't think that we need to toot our own horn here.
I like to think that too. I don't know. I think you got to basically usually underestimate people's curiosity. So for them to open up the About Us, go to our page, they've got to be pretty interested already. They've got to know that we do this. So I think we've got to make it clear that in this, I kind of talked about our hometown like I was outside of it. I'm not going to do that anymore. That was an early approach I had.
Yeah, that's almost kind of sneaky.
I don't want to be sneaky. Exactly. I want to be totally upfront. We're web developers. This is what we do, but we also happen to study the industry.
Yeah, maybe just a blurb at the end that says, if you'd like to know more about our hometown, read the notes below or something like that.
Or some people, they put links, like at the beginning or the end, just something subtle.
Yeah, I think something on the default screen with the URL there, website development services. It could just be a visual thing. It doesn't have to be something I say every time, but I probably should say it sometimes. It could also just be, again, going back to everything's about playlists. It could just be a video that I create once and I put it in every playlist.
Mm-hmm. But if you follow anything on YouTube, people are really, like, a lot of times I'll read some of the comments, and a big part of the comments is, please get rid of all the subscribe, like, blah, blah, blah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you go on to
Interesting.
Because it takes up so much time of the video, a big part of the video. So people love YouTube. If they're like it, they know how to subscribe. It's kind of self-explanatory.
Right.
It's not even worth mentioning,
Yeah, I would agree with that, except there have been times where I definitely, they said it and then I did subscribe. I don't know if I would have without them saying it. It worked on me a few times. I don't know. Yeah. That's all I can say.
Part of it might just be we need to do it early on in order to gain the following, and then we can taper off towards the end.
That's a good idea.
Interesting. Towards the end of once
we actually have an audience.
Yeah. I'm thinking big for this. Like, I'm not thinking there's really even a number that I would be happy with. I want to just
definitely.
I know what you're saying. Like, there is going to be a certain point where you have organic growth.
Exactly.
We're going to have, initially we're going to have to be tagging other organizations in lots of videos, hashtags every time. Those actually work. I don't always remember to do them. Let's see, like on personal, in my experience with using Instagram personally, hashtags get way more likes just immediately. And then there's paid advertising too. But let's get to the actual topic here. I mean, we talked to Florida Weekly. Vera, you were on that call. And I wanted to show you guys this. This is kind of an internal thing. Probably want to talk about it on Friday. Payson sent me this idea for, so he described this idea for a mobile display, that's a computer that's Wi-Fi connected, and it's rotating screens from the homepage of Florida Weekly, the front page of the PDF. And it does show some HTML versions, but they're all screenshots, and it requires this display. So something that he texted me over the weekend when he was in Atlanta was this, just something simpler as a way to get people connected through their phone. It's got a QR code. It gives you a free edition of the Wall Street Journal, which is valuable. That's actually worth something. And then it's pretty cool. You scan the QR code and then this comes up. It makes you text them. So then they have your number and you have to text them the code. And then as soon as that happens, then you get this back. It's a link to this week's PDF edition. But I think the big thing that Payson wants is to be able to capture phone numbers and then send them every week a text. Just make it really easy for them to opt out at any time. But as soon as they opt in through one of these signs, just keep sending them every edition from then on out. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Like, I feel like I would definitely use this for a free edition of the Wall Street Journal. I don't think they're doing what he wants to do. They're not giving it away every week. They just do the one, but as a free paper, it would make sense for him to give it away. Yeah. I mean, no real need for a comment on it. Just thought you guys might have a reaction.
Yeah, I was on the call too, and just leave it to Payson to think of something like this. It's perfect. You're waiting in the doctor's office. You're waiting at the airport. You're waiting to get your oil changed. Things out there. It's just walk by and click your phone, click that QR code, boom, you're done.
Yeah, I think the QR code would be on we could, encourage people to put it on the print edition too. It could either download the app, it could go to the current edition, it could just go to the homepage.
I'll tell you what, this is a really smooth transition. I used to use QR codes on replacement, and all it would do was take you to the e-edition and people could read it. We would donate the placemats to local restaurants. So when people sat down, they would scan the QR code and get this week's paper. Just, as a trial thing. And then they had their paywall meter, and then they would have to subscribe. But this takes it a next step where you get their phone numbers or emails. I'm sure you could tailor it to get whatever information you want. But that is a fantastic idea.
I asked Jack to look into it, but it's not as automated as I'd like it. I mean, it sounds like, they would have to organize the phone numbers. We need something that just feeds the phone numbers into some texting system, puts them on basically a text newsletter. Automatically when they scan that code and text that number. Developing this type of thing, I don't know if we have the resources to develop it right now, but I'm trying to decide if do you guys think that other publishers would adopt this and go, all in with like putting up signs in doctors' offices, or at least putting the QR code on their print edition?
I think we probably have enough publishers that would jump at the opportunity. It has to be, first of all, like you said, the automation is key, but it also has to be affordable. And I think that might be the one thing that would hold publishers back.
Well, yeah, there's probably a texting fee with these services, or a monthly fee that includes a certain number of texts at least. Okay. Yeah. I just need to get back to Payson on it. So I think I'm going to send him a note kind of summarizing the project and make sure that, I kind of understand all his requirements, and, we'll see where we can fit that in. But
I think there's also another thing where the technology trend goes up and down. I know probably about 7 years ago, QRs were everywhere. I mean, you couldn't even go to the store without QRs being on labels and all kinds of media.
Yes.
But then it's kind of disappeared. Well, now it's back, you know, so it's just keeping up with the trends and the need for it. If we can keep it to where it's easy to engage, and some publishers don't even realize how valuable a tool. For instance, Lakota Times just started using the QR again because there's a big need in their area.
Oh, that's great. I mean, how do they use it? Do you know, to download the edition, or?
She does it for a couple of things. She has shirts, hats, and mugs, I think she's doing. She has a QR for it, and it is in the print edition and online for their merchandise. And then she also has for the subscriptions. She has it in the print, and she has it online as well.
Okay, gotcha. I see it on their homepage. I'm just looking at it right now. Just bring it up on my screen real quick. On the print edition, they've got this QR code over here right on the front page, and it looks like here are the t-shirts for sale. So it would link through to this, and you got the Stripe enabled payment form. So that's great. That's a good way to drive revenue. I think
she even has it in her office. She's got like a display where people can scan.
Yeah, I mean, it's no doubt easier than typing in the URL. So there's that. If people are interested, if they're hooked and they want to go to your site, it's definitely good to have a QR code there. I don't think it's going to make people go to the site just seeing a QR code. But one thing I told Payson is that, I don't know if you guys know, but this is kind of a news tech tip. Point this out in print, like wherever you have the QR code, that you can just pull up your camera app and just point that at the QR code. Did you guys know that? And it will detect that there's a QR code. It won't take a picture. It'll just it'll open up a browser and send you to the website. So you don't need a QR code app. And I think that's really important, because no one's going to download a QR code app to scan it. But, that's a higher barrier to entry. So let's just take a poll of the three of you who knew that was possible, at least on an iPhone. I know it's possible.
I didn't.
I knew about it.
Notice it until this year, but I have been using it a lot since.
So, okay. So 1 out of 3 knew that was a feat. Vera, you said you didn't?
I did know, but
you did.
it
I'm
also
sorry.
depends on the phone too. Like my older phone doesn't work with it, but my new phone does.
So you got 3 different answers, Matt. You got one that didn't, one that kind of did, and one that did.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Well, that's enough. I mean, the fact that a third didn't know, I mean, we should be educating the audience. So looks like we got the website launched. We got to update the logo. But see, what we're doing with this thing is we're using all the tools that we talk about using. So this is our prototype site. We're going to be publishing here everything that we put on video. We're going to be turning it back into an audio article, which is kind of funny because we actually have to write the article after we make the video. So the audio article just reads like what we're writing about. Might be cool to one day, like just be able to plug in the video that I recorded into this player. I can see that being useful, but that would only be if they're like really involved in like vodcasting. There, let's get back to it. I want to try to keep this under like the normal hour. We'll come back to this one. Maybe this was one of the first ones I made, so it's kind of farthest from where we're going with it. Let's check this one out. So I am really excited about this one. Tyler produced this with audio articles as the narrator. I think it's important for us to demonstrate how you can have a daily podcast, even daily manually produced, but you can still fill that out with audio articles. You know, you could have multiple episodes a day that way if you wanted to. But I think at a minimum, it's going to make this sustainable for him and I to have one episode come out a day, even if that one is produced from a blog episode or article. So let's watch this one.
Today in News Tech, new advertising opportunities created by the audio podcast boom. Here at our hometown, we try to stay on top of the latest developments when it comes to online newspaper publishing. In this news brief, we're highlighting a piece by Michaeli Rourke over at Digital Content Next about the ways podcasting is impacting ad revenue. The podcast advertising market continues to rise steadily quarter after quarter, said Michaeli Rourke. The article, As Podcasting Soars, Advertising Follows, discusses the ways that audio program listenership has increased despite many people's lack of a commute in recent years. An increase in ad spending has followed in tandem with an expanding podcast audience. Here are a few of our big takeaways. As of 2021, 28% of the U.S. population over the age of 12 listens to podcasts on a weekly basis. Between 2020 and 2021, podcast advertising increased by 40% and is expected to reach $1.6 billion by the end of the year. Studies show that advertisements that are read in a casual tone by podcast hosts are 48% more effective. Podcasting is a great medium for any outlet looking to attract younger readers, as well as a great source of a growing amount of ad share. Because of this, our hometown developed audio article podcasts to help newspapers to tap into the podcast market in a way that is accessible to newsrooms of all sizes and technical capabilities. Thanks for watching Today in News Tech, the podcast where we discuss the innovations happening in digital journalism. Remember to like and subscribe to keep up to date with everything happening in online media.
Excellent. I
Hey,
love
everyone,
that.
and welcome to this. Okay. So great. I mean, this playlist really is cool because I mean, every episode's a little different. That one was, based on that one article. So could you understand the audio okay, like with the music and everything?
Yeah, I might reduce the volume on the music just a little bit.
Because the song kind of varies with the beat on and off. It, like if it was no beat the whole time, it'd probably be the right volume, you know. Right. So it's kind of tricky. Yeah. But yeah, he deliberately put that in there because it's not a live recording to try to keep the energy up a little bit throughout. I thought that was an interesting idea.
Yeah, it is. The other thing I noticed is if you're just listening to the podcast, you can't see the pop-ups that are part of the article, and they're great. Those, I like the way he did that.
Highlighting the article visually, the graphs and everything. That's always something to keep in mind when we're writing these. A big part of it in my mind is the audio. We'll see where the audience gravitates. Maybe we'll have the most followers on Facebook, which is going to be video. It's kind of interesting to me that publication like this, the common thread is actually audio, because you have the audio article on the blog post with the text. You have the audio podcast, which is only audio, and then you got video, which of course has audio. So we're kind of getting away from text being like the common thread, although I guess there's some text on all of them. We're going to try to put more lengthy. I didn't even put any description on this one. We're trying to make that a part of the process, like even put the whole article in the description. Why not? So that however people want to absorb the information. I did have one thing I wanted to say. Okay. So in 2021, 28% of the US listens to podcasts weekly. That is interesting to me because a similar study that I was highlighting a year ago in the beginning of the pandemic, when everything shut down, listening went up. But the stat at the time was that it was about a third, 30% of the US listens to audio once a week, at least once a week. And that included online radio, just music, all music, Spotify. But now they're saying 30% specifically listen to podcasts. I don't know what the percentage was then that listens to podcasts weekly, but it's probably like 10%. That's really exciting to me. That number is just growing. So to say that the 30% listen to audio on a frequency that you're publishing the paper, that's a real kind of apples to apples comparison to me, and the audience turning up to get your content. These stats are very interesting. The money being spent there, obviously it's more on the huge podcasts that, they're getting rich off this, they're kind of leading the way, but I think we could catch up quickly, especially, if we just focus on what we're good at, which is local content and local advertisers, to serve those advertisers in a really custom way, create an audio ad for them. And there's ways to do that with audio articles too. I think we'll do one more from the playlist. So this is another multi-story one, and it's got a little Our Hometown plug in it. Hey, everyone, and welcome to This Week in News Tech, the podcast where we discuss the innovations happening in journalism. I'm your host, Matt Larson, and today we're going to start off. Our top story is on the Journalism Sustainability Act. It still hasn't passed, but we got some more details on it, what it entails, mainly tax credits to incentivize good behavior. First of all, we'll look at the subscriber targeted tax credit up to $250 to incentivize subscriptions and donations to local news. We've also got a $5,000 tax credit for small businesses that buy ads in their local publications. And lastly, it seems like the most significantly, the payroll tax credit to make hiring local reporters, editors, photographers, and other journalists easier, and of course, helping keep them on. In this example, for a local reporter making $50,000 a year, the tax credit would cover half of her salary in year one and 30% in the remaining years. The tax credit, $250 a year. I mean, how many subscriptions would that get you with our customers? I think you could subscribe to 5 websites, right?
Right.
I mean,
this is the thing that I think I am most excited about, is because I see a lot of advertising opportunity here. The first thing, it's super convenient. If this goes through, it's super convenient for readers because you don't have to itemize your deductions to get this credit.
It's just a tax credit. So yeah, it's not a deduction. It's just, you just subtract $250 off of what you owe.
Right. Exactly.
What you're paying taxes on.
So, for readers that want to support local journalism, now they have a reason to.
Yeah, this is an economic reason. It's cool. It's using the law to fight kind of what's been happening with the economy, which is not good. It's been a race to the bottom in terms of advertising, the cost of advertising.
Right. And another thing is the newspaper doesn't take a hit for it. It's not a donation that's written off or that the publisher has to claim. It's a straightforward thing. I think it's awesome. I'm really hoping that this part goes through. And then, all 3 points here are fantastic, because now you have incentive for advertisers to advertise with your publication as well.
This is a great one. Absolutely. Again, fighting the economic forces that are out of control because of monopolies, that exist in digital advertising, not to get too opinionated on it, but, there's tons of legislation, antitrust against Google out there. So, this is kind of the government, using the tools that they have at their disposal. They're not technical people. They can't fight them on that front, but they can create these incentives, and it's understanding human incentive that drives behavior.
Well, it's not just the human incentive, it's the dollars. I'm sure.
Right. Which is right. If they're acting in their self-interest. Yeah.
Right. In my rose-colored glasses world, I don't think advertisers don't not want to advertise. They do want to advertise,
right,
but have a budget.
They can't justify it. Yeah. It just doesn't make literal sense to them because, whatever the cost is, they've got to be able to justify it with more sales. So this is going to lower the cost.
Exactly. And again, the paper doesn't take a hit for it.
They're still charging full price. Yeah. This could get more people doing more print ads or, just a whole bunch of digital stuff for $5,000. I'm sure most papers that will get you a lot.
And our community papers certainly don't have 50 employees.
Fighting, this never-ending march towards, everything going to Amazon, all the business being outsourced out of town. It's pro-local, all of this. And this is, hiring local reporters, $50,000 a year. It pays half their salary. I don't really understand the structure of this. I don't know why they gave this example. Like, what if they're not making 50,000? Is it just a $25,000 credit? I don't know. Maybe I think they have to be making a minimum amount to get the 25K or something. That kind of tapers off, but it's a good way to get someone on board and, contributing to the operation and cutting your costs there. So that's something that does impact the newspaper directly, but obviously in a good way. So this is not passed yet. So we're just kind of like hoping at this point, but it's cool to get ahead of this, I think, because like I said, it's going to have to be a lot of education on the part of the paper, even just helping people, like showing them their tax form and like showing them where to put this deduction, like exactly how to take advantage. All right. So that's that video. Let's finish up these other two stories. We've got a new update from the engineers over at Our Hometown. We're working really hard. Again, not going to do it. Building tools for local journalists to work on WordPress and to maximize the reach of their content. And we're focusing on the audio format right now. Audio articles, playlists is a new feature available that we just released. The playlist is really exciting to us. I mean, if you look around at a lot of the major metro dailies, they have audio articles, same as we do. Let's see if I can find an example here. Right here. Listen to the article.
Facebook employees flag drug cartels.
In fact, it sounds like they're using a very similar technology. But I think the key with audio is to have it in a playlist format. You want to be able to allow the user to hit play and then just let it go and listen to the whole newspaper. And so that's the main innovation that we've got now. I mean, we've had the on article player for over a year, but with this, it's really a fantastic interface. It's kind of inspired by Spotify and, a lot of the playlist driven tools and applications that are out there. So let's take a look at a live example here of what we have at the Cattle Business Weekly. So they've got these collections across the top audio articles driven by their stats, looking at articles by segment, into the archives, this week's articles, last week's, this month's, last month. Then you've got just a stream of the most recent audio articles published and then broken down by category. These are all, common ways that people like to browse the audio. If you're interested in learning more about this, just contact us at ourhometown.com/audio articles playlist is actually, or podcast, excuse me. That's the URL you're going to want to go to. We'll be sure to put this in the video comments, and you can sign up right here for a free month trial. After that, it's just $99 a month for 2 million characters transcribed each month. and very straightforward sign up process there. And we can do that as a third party. We don't need to manage the WordPress website. But if you are on our WordPress platform, it's a simple plugin to turn that on. Okay. Also in the news, we've got a brief update here from Google News. This update that they've released could mean more traffic for newspapers. Let's give this audio article a listen.
News brief. Google News update could mean more traffic for newspapers. Google recently announced that they are changing the way they share content through the Google News program, and it could have big impact on the traffic your website is seeing. Traditionally, Google News has used RSS feeds to collect news content from news publishers and render it directly within the Google News application or on Google's website. While this resulted in more eyes on the shared content and perhaps some brand exposure, most of the readers viewing the content never actually visited the website where the content originated. In a sense, publishers were trading their page views for the perceived exposure of being featured within Google News. Google's new announcement will change all of that, as they are doing away with the RSS feed approach and will instead begin sending readers directly to the article's source, your website. As a result, you should more traffic being sent to your website from Google, allowing you to truly reap the benefits of Google News and hopefully generate some revenue off of your new audience in the form of new subscriptions or ad revenue.
Okay, last news brief today. This is an interesting update. A lot of pressure must be happening on Apple to change their monetization strategy, but Apple reduces revenue share for news publishers. Those making less than $1 million annually in the App Store will now receive 85% of the revenue from subscriptions, as opposed to the 70% they were getting before, with Apple taking a 30% cut. They've also got this news partner deal, which provides the same 85% revenue to the publisher for all outlets that make over $1 million, but also publish a robust amount of content in Apple News ecosystem. So bottom line is they basically cut their revenue share in half from 30 to 15%. Will this have an impact on the demand from local news publishers for apps? I would imagine it would. So we stand ready with our apps to meet that demand. And we are going to actually have to do some development to make this work, because we've been sending subscribers back to the website to subscribe and then log into the app. We definitely think it makes sense to offer it as an option, to sell subscriptions actually directly through the app, so you can see a clear ROI on that. And really the app turns into a sales tool then, rather than just a value add for the current subscribers. Okay, that's all we've got for this week in News Tech. Thanks for checking out this episode, and we'll see you next week. Let me ask you guys this on this Google thing. Have you noticed that change? I see that now it does only show a short teaser, but in the past was like the whole article here? I mean, I don't know if you guys were active users before this update, but I don't really see much of a difference. This is what I remember it always being. So I'm not quite sure what that update's about. I'd like to see like a before and after. Maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not familiar with it at all.
Okay.
To me.
Well, in any case, I mean, right now it's definitely, if you want to read that whole story, you're not going to get it just on Google News. So that's good anyway. And then on this one, we've talked about this in office hours before. We probably don't need to get into it, but let's just take another quick poll. How many of you guys have purchased a subscription to content through an app? Just using the credit card that you have in, your Apple account or whatever.
I have not.
I definitely have.
Right. Tyler, you said you had. A lot of them don't allow it. Like you can't. I know Netflix is famous for sending people back to the website and then you log into the app, and that's how we do it. I think I mentioned it before. I remember subscribing to Medium. They made it so easy to do it through the app, and the app is a really nice. It's one of the better news apps out there. In that case, it actually created a sale for them. All right. So that's all that we've got for this week's summary of Today in News Tech.